You know, one of the really fun things about my job is I get to meet a lot of unique people, and a lot of these people have unique hobbies or things that I find interesting. This machine, I don't know if you've had a chance to guess at what it is yet, is an old logging saw that had a back and forth motion. That over on the left there is actually the engine. There's the gas tank. This is not the same engine that goes on this unit. These are two things side by side. This is a really old Fairbanks-Morse engine, and I think these things are fascinating. He said that it'll work. He says it'll fire off. And you can see the magneto right there. And if you watch really closely, you can see the piston going in. It goes into the compression stroke. And you see those springs start activating any second now. Let's see if we can hear it click. There it goes. That was the spark that kicked it off. But to see the rotation, those are little grease cups, and there's an oil reservoir on the top. And that ran a big belt on the side. And the guy collected a bunch of them. This red one here is actually a hit or miss. Hit and miss. It's a hit and miss. Also the Fairbanks-Morse. This one is unusual. This one over here is about the same as the previous one, but this red one, those engines are really unusual. You got to look those up to find out how those things ran. I've seen them in operation before, and they're fascinating. Up on the top of this one here, you see that opening. That's where there's the label for it. The opening is for where you put water on the inside. So instead of having a radiator that pumps water into the jacket around the piston is actually right there. It's exposed. You can see the back part of it. So anyway, back to the job. I find those things fascinating. This guy had a tree in the front yard that he's had for a long, long time, this little Christmas tree. And if you see in the distance there, that big tree is the same age as this little one. So for the entire time this guy has been here, there's also another one. That one is the same age as the tree that I'm talking about. But he's kept it trimmed down. He's kept it somewhat, I don't know if I want to use bonsai as the word. You can see how many tops this thing developed. Look at that. It kept chopping it back and chopping it back. Well, he didn't get around to it for a while, and it started growing out. And it's getting a little bit older. And I said, would you want me to shape your Christmas tree for you? And he was so appreciative. So there's the first stage of it. I got the big hedge trimmer out on the pole. I did end up finishing the top of it with the bucket, just so I can do a real nice job. And I had to raise the skirt on the bottom. Let's see, is that what it looks like? There we go. It's all done. And to top it off, I did put the star on there. So now we're off to yet another job. It's the very next day. So this is a larger estate property that I work on, and we have pruned all of these eucalyptus trees along this road. And what's interesting is this road goes to a house that was built in 1906. And the adjacent property has never been developed, but now it's going to be developed. There's a bit more of the property, beautiful property. We had a lot of decisions to make on this property, including getting rid of some of the superfluous trees where there was 3 and 4 and sometimes 5 of the same tree in the same space. I like to talk about a lot of different things in some of these videos, and this one is a little bit scattered, but I think you're going to like this part. This is a brush dolly that we built, years and years ago. Jim McDermott and I'm going to say at least 20, maybe 25 years ago, came up with the idea that we needed to develop a brush cart that was also good for hauling logs, like a log dolly. So we came up with many, many interpretations of this design, and this is the one that we ultimately ended up building. Actually, we found somebody to build it for us. And it works out pretty good when you've got a lot of small brush. Rather than taking one armload at a time, you can take 10 armloads at a time. And sure, you've got to take the time to load it up, but really when you're picking up piles to haul out, you're taking the same amount of time than walking it out and coming back. So there's a close-up of the cart. You can see with 2 2x4s, it goes into this sort of a manifold that holds the wood These things have been used for so long, they're pretty beat up, but they hang in there. You've got the two configurations, either more straight up and down to go through the gates, or if you've got a wider space, you can leave them wide like this. You just keep adding to it. Oh, this was a mess. Persimmon trees. Look at the weight on that one branch. I told her that if she doesn't thin the fruit, it's going to break. So she asked me if we would take care of it, and as soon as I started shaking it, these ultra soft, squishy fruit, about 20% of them were overripe. They were splatting on the ground. So it became a nuisance job. I was wondering why there was so much fruit there, and I realized there must be something in the soil. So anyway, I got up in the trees in the back there and came to the realization that the gardeners, or whoever's been working in the past, clearly didn't know what they were doing. Here's a cut with a chainsaw, maybe a chainsaw on a pole, that they didn't even make it all the way through. All the stubs, all the bad cuts, the nicks, the tears, the rips. It was horrible working on this job. But this part of the job was really a mess. She asked us if we could salvage the hard ones, and so I filled up 4 or 5 bags. But the truth be known, this tree is about ready to self-destruct. So for the sake of saving the tree, I decided to pick the fruit, and once we got started, all 3 of us got cranking on this tree, and we just decided to get rid of as much of the fruit as we possibly can. We did save a number of large bags full of the solid ones, but unfortunately, we must have hauled up 500 or 600 pounds. I mean, that load right there is about 75 to 80 pounds, just a quarter of the way full, and we filled these buckets up so many times. It took about an hour to do that, and there's the after effect. So the tree is not going to fall apart. It's going through its dormancy, and I did leave the token single persimmon up there. A lot of the work we're doing in the yard involves using of the pole pruner, and I've got a lot of these old Marvin pruners. Marvin is one of my favorites, kind of an old standby, and they do require a lot of maintenance. So what I wanted to talk about a little bit here is, if you can see that the edge of the blade, I sharpened it, but right in the center there, it's not quite done. If you can see sort of a rounding over on the edge of the backside of the blade, it's not sharp enough. Use a good flat file, fine flat file, and you can do a pretty fair job. It only takes about 5 minutes or so to bring this blade back up. But the anvil, the other side, the top part that I'm touching right now, on this particular one's been used so much that it's rounded over. So for a pole pruner to work correctly and not rip and pull little bits of the bark, it's got to be a nice clean cut from the blade to a sharp, crisp anvil. If it's got the round over like this one does, every time you cut it, it's going to leave a little tiny piece of the bark on the branches, which doesn't make a quick, clean cut. So the solution is either to replace that component of the pole pruner, but you can also file it down. The best, easiest way is to use a round grinding bit on something like a Dremel tool. But I want to show you out here in the field, I can do a little bit of hand filing, and we keep lots of files in the truck. I buy them by the case. This is a case of the flat files, and if you buy them in bulk, they're a whole lot cheaper. This particular box here, I can't remember how much it was, about $3 a file or so. But when they get dull, chuck them. Don't try and use them, because they do reach a point where they just don't cut anymore. And we keep 2 sizes, actually 3 sizes of chainsaw sharpening round files, and this is one of the larger ones. I think that's 7/32. And with a larger round file in good shape, it takes a little while, and you have to put it in a vise to really do it right. But you can file it up to a point where you'll make the pole pruner so much more usable. If you're out in the yard clipping and they don't come free every time, it really slows down your work. And a lot of the stuff that we had to do, like there's That's a live oak, and it's just full of a disease. That we've got all kinds of anthracnose and diplodia and all kinds of things that cause the leaves to die back. And then we've got the biggest disease of all. That's the power company pruning. Oh, look at that nick. This is the way the gardeners trimmed it. They just went through and left big stubs. And the hard part is the client, she took the attitude that, the gardeners can do that easy stuff. Well, a lot of times they use the wrong tool. They don't really know what they're doing, and they don't take the care that the plant needs. And long-term decay is something that a lot of gardeners don't even consider. They don't think about it. It's a tree. You cut it hard, it comes back. So as I was looking through these trees, these are olives, she really wanted us to clean them up. And there were so many weird cuts, that somebody got in there and made. You can see where they hit the bark on the sound part. And this is a way that you do it with a chainsaw. You don't just cut all the way through and let it make an impact. You cut it most of the way through, and you throttle it down. And in this case, if I would have made a bigger cut, it would have been a flush cut. So my goal is to make the closest to the trunk that you can without it being a elongated larger wound or a stub. Front yard. They had separation between the two properties, and these are Leyland Cypress. And before these people bought the property, someone planted these cypress in hopes of making a hedgerow. But there's a pitch canker disease, cypress canker, that is raging through many of our species of cypress. So I never recommend cypress as a tree to plant. And here you can see what's happening. One by one by one, they're all succumbing to this disease. And these were planted not very long ago. They bought big pots. So the previous owner spent a fortune on this future hedge that was not to be. All the way along, you can see the oozing. And they knew that there'd be a future house going in. And this isn't just a house. This is going to be like a 10 or 12,000 foot monster spec home. So this little piece of paradise here now is going to be overrun by as big a building as this developer can possibly put in here. And that oak tree in the back there, that's going to go. The ukes on the side, they're going to go. It's going to be a total mess. Hey, if you like these videos, please subscribe and click on the like button while you're at it. Thanks for watching.